Anchoring. Anchoring is a thinking error where an initial piece of information, the anchor, heavily influences subsequent judgments and decisions. Imagine you walk into a clothing store looking for a new jacket. The first jacket you see is priced at $300. Later you find another jacket priced at $150. Even if you didn't plan to spend that much, the $150 jacket now seems like a great deal because the $300 price anchored your perception, making the second price appear more reasonable and attractive. The initial high price sets an anchor that influences your judgment about what constitutes a good deal. Or you are estimating the number of jelly beans in a jar at a fair. The person before you guesses there are 1,000 jelly beans in the jar. Even if you initially thought there were around 500 jelly beans, you might adjust your estimate closer to 1,000 because of the previous guess. The first guess serves as an anchor, influencing your estimate, even if it's not accurate. Anchoring teaches us that our brains are wired to rely on the first piece of information we receive, which then colors all subsequent decisions. Endowment effect. The endowment effect is a thinking error where people assign more value to things simply because they own them. Imagine you receive a coffee mug as a gift. If someone offers to buy it from you for $10, you might refuse, feeling that the mug is worth more. However, if you were asked to buy the same mug from a store, you might be unwilling to pay more than $5. The fact that you own the mug makes it more valuable to you, illustrating the endowment effect. What you see is all there is. This is a thinking error where people make decisions based on the information they have, ignoring what they don't know. Imagine you're choosing a restaurant based on online reviews. You see a few glowing reviews praising the food and service, so you decide it's a great place to eat. However, you don't see the reviews mentioning long wait times or poor hygiene. Your decision is based on the positive reviews you see, not the full picture. Or think about watching a movie trailer that shows all the exciting parts. You decide the movie must be great based on the trailer alone, but the trailer doesn't show any of the boring or poorly acted scenes. You're making a decision based on the limited information presented to you. It shows us that we are very quick to make poor decisions. Availability heuristic. Availability heuristic is a thinking error where people judge the likelihood of events based on how easily examples come to mind. Suppose you're thinking about getting married. You remember several friends who had difficult divorces, and those experiences are easy to recall. As a result, you might overestimate the likelihood of divorce and underestimate the chances of a successful marriage, despite statistics showing many marriages do last. Or consider deciding whether to install a home security system. If you remember a recent burglary in your neighborhood, you might overestimate the risk of a break-in. This single vivid example makes you think burglaries are more frequent than they are. Framing effect. The framing effect is a thinking error where people's decisions are influenced by how information is presented rather than just the information itself. Imagine you need surgery, and your doctor presents the success rate in two different ways. The surgery has a 90% success rate. The surgery has a 10% failure rate. Even though both statements convey the same information, you're likely to feel more confident about the surgery with the 90% success rate than the 10% failure rate. The positive framing makes the procedure seem more favorable. Or consider a marketing example. A yogurt brand advertises its product as 90% fat-free rather than 10% full-fat. The positive frame of 90% fat-free sounds healthier and more appealing to consumers, even though the fat content is the same. Framing effect shows that presentation of information seriously impacts our decisions. Substitution. Substitution is a thinking error where people replace a difficult question with an easier one, often without realizing it. Imagine you're asked, "How satisfied are you with your life?" This is a complex question that requires considering various aspects of your life. Instead of tackling this challenging question, you might unconsciously substitute it with a simpler question like, "How happy am I right now?" Your answer to the simpler question influences your response to the more complex one. Or consider being asked, "Is this politician qualified for office?" Instead of evaluating their qualifications, you might substitute this with, "Do I like this politician?" Your personal feelings about the politician become a stand-in for the more complicated assessment of their qualifications. Substitution shows that our brains often take shortcuts when faced with complex questions. Base rate neglect. Base rate neglect is a thinking error where people ignore general statistical information, base rates, in favor of specific information when making decisions. Imagine you meet a person who is very quiet and loves reading. If you're asked whether this person is more likely to be a librarian or a farmer, You might quickly guess librarian based on their personality traits. However, statistically, there are far more farmers than librarians, which means it's actually more likely they are a farmer. Ignoring this base rate leads you to the wrong conclusion. Or, you see a news story about a lottery winner and think you have a good chance of winning too. The base rate, however, shows that the odds of winning the lottery are extremely low. Ignoring this, you might overestimate your chances of winning. Base rate neglect shows that ignoring general statistics is a very common thing. Loss aversion. Loss aversion is a thinking error where people feel the pain of losses more strongly than the pleasure of gains. This means that losing something often feels much worse than gaining something of equal value feels good. Imagine you find $20 on the ground. It makes you happy, but if you then lose $20 from your wallet, the pain of losing it feels much worse than the joy of finding it. The negative feelings associated with the loss outweigh the positive feelings of the gain. Or consider you're offered a bet where you can either win $100 or lose $100 with a 50-50 chance. Even though the potential gain and loss are equal, most people will refuse the bet because the fear of losing $100 is stronger than the excitement of winning $100. Loss aversion is why people hold on to losing investments because they don't want to accept the loss. Dunning-Kruger effect. Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias where people with low ability or knowledge in a particular area overestimate their competence, while those with high ability or knowledge may underestimate their competence. Take someone who has just started playing tennis, might think they are quite good after winning a few matches against beginners. They might not recognize the technical skills and strategies required to compete at higher levels. Conversely, an experienced tennis player, aware of the advanced techniques and intense competition, might be more critical of their own abilities. Priming effect. Priming effect is a phenomenon where what we see, hear, or experience first can shape how we react to something later. Imagine you read the word dog and then are asked to complete this word. Because you were primed with the word dog, you're more likely to recognize and complete the word as bark. Or you read a story about kindness and helping others. Later, when you see someone struggling to carry their groceries, you're more likely to offer help because the story primed you to think about kindness and altruism. Priming effect has one of the strongest influences on our brains, shaping our reactions and decisions without us knowing. Context effect. The context effect is a phenomenon where the surrounding environment or context influences how we perceive and interpret information. For example, exercising in a well-equipped, clean, and motivating gym environment can make workouts feel more effective and enjoyable. Exercising in a dirty, poorly maintained gym might not provide the same level of motivation and satisfaction. Or, dining at a restaurant with elegant decor, soft lighting, and pleasant background music can make the food taste better and the overall experience more enjoyable. In contrast, the same meal might not be as enjoyable in a noisy, poorly decorated restaurant. All of us have experienced this effect at some point in our lives. Hit subscribe and watch this video on the rulebook of life.